The Last Day of Her Life by Max Masure. On the last day of her life, Sophie woke up exhausted in her bed, alone in her dream home, the fanciest one she'd ever lived in, with its large open-floor living room and kitchen, and an even bigger private rooftop. It was March 6, 2017, not spring yet in New York City, no flowers or leaves on the trees, but it felt as if everything was ready to bloom after long months of winter stillness. Spring had been her favorite season, and she didn't remember yet that she felt like a different person when the pink petals started to fly in the sky and land on the sidewalk, a magical wonder that would last only until busy New Yorkers walked on them, strollers squashed them, sticking to their wheels for blocks, and heavy trash bags got blown on them on the night before the noisy garbage trucks did their rounds. Her Brooklyn home at the border of Clinton Hill and Bed-Stuy had 2 floors, 2 bedrooms, a separate office, and a rooftop. She filled the space with elegant West Elm furniture, plush carpets, a mid-century modern dining table, and Eames-style white chairs, and a beige-gray IKEA sectional sofa. Her husband, Guy, had just left for his engineering work at a well-known TV network and brought their 2-year-old child, Capucine, to daycare. Still in her pajamas, Sophie shuffled down the stairs to her living room, grimacing at the feeling of her heavy and wet period pads sticking to her crotch. She went straight to her usual spot, on the beige-gray IKEA sectional sofa. This is where she sat and seriously considered ending her life. She had some glimpses of him in the past. A year before, she looked more closely at her face in the bathroom mirror in their smaller railroad apartment in East Williamsburg, the one with a backyard, but she didn't recognize herself for a quick second. She even felt gross, thinking that she looked like the man with a rat-tail haircut in the TV post-apocalyptic zombie show The Walking Dead that she religiously watched every week. Before that, while visiting family in Melbourne, Australia, she walked around, pushing her baby in a blue yo-yo stroller, wearing her red summer dress and a large red polka-dot hat. It was so damn hot, and her annoying hair kept her head warm for no reason. Trump had just been elected for the first time, and her anger bubbled up like volcanic lava. That day, when she sat in the 1950s red leather hairstylist chair, she gained the strength to ask for what she'd always wanted, but never allowed herself to have: a short haircut. Under the big black cape covering her body, her thighs were sweating in the chair. The hairstylist cut her hair shorter and shorter, inch after inch. She stayed still the whole time. She was looking at the mirror, in the mirror. Until that day, she avoided mirrors and never looked in them for more than a second. This time, she looked into her own reflected eyes. She stared at them deeply, like black holes swallowing stars. And suddenly, for a few seconds, she saw a glimpse of him again. What did she see? Who did she just see? Who was she, really? She didn't know it yet, but that day she sat down in the hairdresser's chair as Sophie and got up as Max. It would take her a few more months to realize that. 2 months later, back in Brooklyn, on that day in March 2017, she stayed on her beige-gray sofa for hours, stuck, cold, frozen, staring into the void. She couldn't take it anymore. The previous night, she had her period again. It had returned a year before, after she stopped breastfeeding her baby. That's how it works. Before that, she didn't have periods for years while taking a microdose birth control pill, and there it was, in her belly, outside her body, and dark red on her fingers when she went to the bathroom. She reacted with nausea, deep sadness, and a feeling that her body was not a safe place anymore. Lately, she would just stop functioning, disconnected from herself, waiting for it to pass, anxious for the following month when it would return. She believed that she hated her periods because she wasn't strong enough, weak and lazy. On March 6, 2017, she could no longer stand it. It had to end, and the only way she knew then was to stop living in this body, to stop living. She knew she would do it if she left the IKEA sofa, so she called her husband at work and whispered, "Please come home. I'm about to do something stupid." There she remained in a crystallized moment while he anxiously traveled back home on the C train from Columbus Circus, a 45-minute trip that might have felt like hours for him. During that time, she was barely breathing, not looking at anything, hanging by a thread, desperately waiting for help. Guy had been very supportive the previous fall when she had to stop working for 3 months because of a severe burnout, which brought her to the hospital for a week. He cared for Capucine so that she could rest. Her brain felt foggy every day, and she struggled to focus. Even using her laptop to browse the internet was almost impossible. She realized that when she returned to work for her design client after a month, she couldn't understand what was on her screen, a project she'd been working on for a year. Terrified, she had to accept that she needed more time away from her laptop, her brain still healing from overexertion. A 12-hour workday, caring for Capucine at night, managing the home and caring for Guy's needs. She had too much on her plate. Will she ever be able to go back to work? Her entire career was built on multitasking and working hard. She was scared to admit that something had to change. But what? Her sofa became her go-to place to try to relax. There, she learned how to breathe fully, taking her time even though it felt challenging to do nothing, not to be productive. Her whole identity was rooted in achievements and meeting the high standards of her cousin, for whom she worked. She had to look inward and learn how to listen to her more profound needs, something she'd never done in the 3 decades of her life. Most days, she binged-watched TV shows, numbing her anxious thoughts about feeling inadequate and not being good enough. She feared that she would never find a job again, that she was broken. After many seasons of many shows, she decided to watch the TV show The L Word, about a group of lesbian women and their dating world. For some unknown reason, she had avoided watching it until now, succumbing to her uncomfortable apprehension, despite her friends constantly talking about it, and for good reason. Through each episode, something in her started to grow warmer until she felt the urge to look for lesbian porn, which was new to her. She never watched porn before, even straight ones. The shame she felt for seeking these types of movies dissipated when she was discovering her body by herself, giving herself pleasure, something she'd never done before. The shame would return, keeping this a secret while she eagerly awaited the next time she could connect with herself. When she was watching Game of Thrones, she would feel aroused when some scenes had nudity, and especially women having sex. She was not looking at the men at all, but only at the women. She felt how wet she became the longer the scene was. She wanted to have sex after almost every episode. Guy noticed and often joked, hopeful, "Is it a night you're watching Game of Thrones?" It took her a year, but she finally understood why she was attracted to roller derby, a predominantly lesbian sport. She was attracted to women. Up until that point, she never questioned her sexuality, and she couldn't hide it anymore. She felt ready to confide in Guy due to having spent 11 years together and the honesty in their relationship. Their trust had kept growing over the years, ever since he admitted and asked for forgiveness when he cheated on her. "I think I'm into women. I feel horny around women, and you know how I feel when there are naked women in Game of Thrones." Guy looked at her and smiled. "That's fine with me if you want to explore with women." Sophie was surprised at how easily he took it, as they were monogamous and had never discussed opening their relationship before. "But how will I do this?" she said, anxious about the idea of meeting a new person and a woman on top of that. "I don't know, maybe you can use a dating app?" "Are you sure?" "Yeah, go ahead. It's better if you explore this than repress it." Wow, well, that went surprisingly well. A heavy weight was lifted off her chest and a new type of anxiety surfaced. She had to find a woman to go on a date. It happened via Tinder, when she found a petite woman with short black hair who lived in Ditmas Park. Sophie was so nervous and uncomfortable that nothing intimate ever happened, not even a kiss, even after their second date. She wanted to forget about the whole thing, feeling embarrassed and inadequate. A few weeks later, on March 6, 2017, when Guy finally arrived at home while she was still stuck on the sofa, she didn't hear everything he said, but he sat beside her, and his just being there was enough to remove the dire calling of ending her life. When she came out of her freeze, she found the courage to make a desperate move and look for a therapist. Why now? Did she feel something terrible would happen if she didn't talk to one? Perhaps the thought of ending her misery was too comforting. That it was a possible exit, or maybe she didn't want to give up. Gasping for air like she did when she was drowning at 6 years old, her mom running to her from the beach. She needed to talk about her unexplored sexual orientation at 35 and found an LGBTQIA+ therapist. She made an appointment for the next morning, wanting him to see her at her worst. She wanted him to see how raw and disgusting she was, her wounds in the open like red and pink meat hanging in the window at her butcher shop. She wanted him to see how broken and flawed she was. If she waited longer, her facade would quickly rise again, pretending to be this happy-go-lucky roller derby cool mom. Growing up in a family that didn't value therapy, she had no idea that it would save her more than once in the following 7 years. Deep scars that seemed healed on the surface would be poked at, squeezed, and cut with a surgeon's X-Acto knife, releasing old pus, equally contaminating her mind and body. That night, alone in her bed, with the headboard fixed on the wall made of 7 thin, horizontal pieces of light wood that she bought when she moved for work with her husband from France to New York City 5 years before, she felt annoyed that Guy was again playing video games downstairs until early morning. She wondered what she'd done or not done to make him avoid going to bed with her. She couldn't pinpoint when it started, but they also stopped kissing goodbye before he left for work, as they had done when they met 11 years ago. Lying on her back, she was nervous about seeing this new therapist in the morning. She only met one years ago for a couple of sessions, which made her feel dirty because her parents didn't believe in therapy. She was glad this one was available on such short notice. What was her appointment time again? 10 a.m.? All right, Capucine would be at daycare by then, so she could go easily. Where was his office? Rolling to her left side, she grabbed her phone from the bedside shelf and pulled up Therapist Al's info on ZocDoc. In his profile picture, he looked kind and happy. She swiped and landed on another selfie, except this one showed him looking like a woman. Weird. How is this possible? Then she remembered she'd watched the TV show The Fosters, with Elliot Fletcher playing a trans boy. Until that point, she had no clue trans men existed, as she only heard disturbing stories about trans women. Her only awareness was from movies like La Cage aux Folles, a fall being a French derogatory word for an effeminate gay man, or the homophobic culture in France that men perpetuated, her dad included, referring to manly activities like driving a powerful car as not being for the fags. It hadn't clicked for her yet, even though her entire Instagram feed was filled with trans men's accounts, where they showed their new chests without breasts. Why this obsession? She didn't even realize she had a sudden excessive interest in trans people. While watching The L Word, she also encountered another trans character, whose name was Max. She remembered thinking, wow, this is so empowering for the character. I want to feel this too. Without realizing it, the glimmers inside her started to light up, ready to shed light when the right time would come. And the time was up. Alone in her bed that night, she felt an electric shock. Why did she pick a trans person as a therapist? In these few seconds of realization, she was at the edge of a crevasse on a dark, stormy night, the wind pushing her back while she looked down into the void. A long time coming, while every sign was pointing in the same direction. If she weren't in shock, she would have laughed at the situation. How could she have missed something that big while it was right in front of her this whole time? Alone in her bed that last night, just a few hours after she was ready to end her life, she closed her eyes for the last time, her breath slowing down, her blood so cold that she felt like her body was sinking into the mattress, never being able to see the light again. Fuck, I'm trans, I said out loud. My blood warmed, my veins revived like tree roots bringing water and sap to the dried branches after winter. I opened my eyes and took the first breath of my new life.